situation. The college football Final Four and bowl games are set, and we're going to recap the committee's decision and offer up our analysis, as well as an early preview of the games itself, including an update on the latest coaching moves, as well as a recap of championship weekend, as we go one-on-one with Mitchell Light, managing editor of Athlon Sports, on the OFN meeting room with Greg DePalma. All right, it's December 6, 2017. I'm Greg DePalma. Thanks for tuning into the OFN meeting room as we talk college football with Mitchell Light. Mitch, thanks for joining us today.
No problem, Greg. Look forward to the chat.
All right, likewise. Mitch, it's a heck of several days. A lot of fans outside of the four teams, Ohio State, that fan base definitely not very happy today, and so forth and so on, but so it is. That's the biggest debate of all as far as the playoff committee had to make. Ohio State, Alabama. Did you think that the game itself, whether it was the score of the game or any other situation regarding before the game even took place, did you think that Ohio State had a legitimate chance to be in the Final Four?
I did. Obviously going into the weekend, Greg, there were a lot of different combinations of things that could happen that would give Ohio State a chance and give Alabama a chance. With Wisconsin in that 4 spot, it was pretty clear that if Wisconsin won that game and won the Big Ten title, then the Badgers would rightfully earn that 4 spot. But if Ohio State won, then it was pretty clear we were going to have an epic debate between Alabama and Ohio State, two of the biggest brands in college football. Yeah. Now there's an argument for USC, but I did not include USC part of the argument. I would not have included them with those two. And I think the committee got it right. If you were watching the selection show, which I think a lot of people were because it was very suspenseful, I agreed with pretty much all the guys in the panel who said that they thought Ohio State would get it, but that they thought Alabama deserved it and was the 4th best team. So I was surprised that they went with that. The committee went with Alabama. I was expecting to see Ohio State's name pop up.
Yeah, the only reason why I actually thought Alabama was going to get in was because of the way the game was played, the Big Ten game. I looked at that game and I was like, you know what? I don't think Ohio State's going to get any bonus points for this win because that was kind of an ugly win. I mean, Wisconsin didn't look very good. The game was kind of slipping away from them in a game where you kind of felt if this was a really good team, they probably would have put Wisconsin away. So I think that, I really think that game, that again, I think maybe their minds might have been changed by what happened in that game.
I agree entirely with you, Greg, there, because I watched every snap of that game from the friendly confines of the house and the couch, and I was not overly impressed with Ohio State. Now, they have looked great at times this year, and that was not one of them. No. I thought J.T. Barrett was average, missed a lot of throws. I thought Wisconsin was very Wisconsin-y. They're a good team that took advantage of a pretty kind schedule to get where they were, and they're a solid team, a top 10 team. But if you thought and this is kind of what the committee said, if you thought Alabama was better before the weekend, you saw nothing out of Ohio State that would lead you to believe, wow, that's a better team. So to me, that's kind of what it boiled down to. If you think Alabama's better, why would you say Ohio State's better just because they beat Wisconsin and have that championship next to their name?
Were you disappointed in Wisconsin?
Not really. I mean, that's kind of they are who they are. Or they are, heading into the season in our preseason magazine, we had them picked to win the Pac-12, the Big Ten West, because the Big Ten West is pretty weak.
Yep.
They're a good team that if you before the season you wouldn't predict they would go undefeated, but you could say, hey, you know what, they could win every game.
Yes.
And the schedule, they didn't play Ohio State, they didn't play Penn State, and this is the regular season. They didn't play Michigan State, and they get Michigan at home. So of those big 3, and I'll throw Michigan State in there because they were better than we all thought, of the big 4 from the East, they probably played what ended up being the weakest of those teams at home. So their schedule could not have fallen better for them. They're a great running team. Hornibrook is a good quarterback, but he's prone to mistakes. So, No, actually, that's kind of what I expected from Wisconsin.
Yeah, matter of fact, injuries definitely hurt Wisconsin and Auburn
Yes.
because Wisconsin. I mean, look, you can blame Honeybrook all everybody wants for him with those turnovers this season, but the fact is, all his receivers were out. I mean, he had nobody to throw to except his tight end. And that's not going to get it done against the top teams. And then, of course, Auburn, the Georgia game. Boy, it was incredible how I think it was the beginning of the week. Auburn was like a 2 or 3 point favorite. And by game time, I think Georgia was like a 2 point favorite. And that's because I'm assuming the money just went crazy after everybody found out Kerryon Johnson really didn't look that good, maybe in warmups, or maybe the word was that he just wasn't looking good. And I guess we saw why, because Auburn is just a completely different team. And look, Petway was out as well. It just shows you that Auburn was not going to win being led by Jarrett Stidham.
Yeah, and it's interesting because sometimes you think those, they're elite running backs. I know they can be true difference makers, but sometimes in those, major programs, you think they're kind of a dime a dozen. You just plug one in, and to some degree they were because, Cameron Petway I saw Auburn in person last year and was physically one of the most impressive running backs I've seen in several years.
Mm-hmm.
So he's not what we expected this year due to injury, and then so Kerryon Johnson steps in and was such a force for this team. But then, like you said, Greg, couldn't overcome that loss. Stidham's a really good quarterback, but when you make Auburn one-dimensional, Gus Malzahn's one of the best offensive coaches, and his team's always been run-based. So when you take that away, that limits their offense. But I thought great performance by Georgia. Whatever adjustments they made, I'm not a smart enough X's and O's guys, but they clearly made some adjustments, and they ran the ball well. Their offensive line dominated the second half. So, just 2 or 3 weeks after losing 41 to whatever the score was,
Sure.
10, they post an impressive win. And that just goes to show sometimes we can sit here and analyze the games, and Auburn did this, Auburn controlled the line of scrimmage, but sometimes we just have no idea what to expect.
Yeah, and I think especially when it comes to kids, and you got to get the emotion in it, and Auburn playing at home, and now it's a neutral site, and then they have to beat a team they just beat. Then they come off to the emotional win of Alabama the week before. I mean, really, see, Alabama the last couple of years, when they went ahead and played Florida, I mean, come on. We all knew who was going to win the game. They were favored by like 20, 30 points for a reason. It wasn't just because Alabama was real good. It's because Florida wasn't very good. Auburn had to go into the emotional win and face Georgia, a team that was just as good as Auburn was, especially with the running back situation on a neutral field. And so maybe that was something that people should have taken into account a little bit more of how difficult that would be for Auburn, not used to beating Alabama, beats Alabama, and then they're just supposed to go ahead and beat Georgia the very next week in the championship game. That's just really asking an awful lot.
Yeah, one thing that we've learned from, if you watch college football closely, it's difficult to play at a high level on a consistent basis, and you're asking Auburn to play basically 3 times in 4 weeks to play a perfect game.
Yep.
Now they had was it Louisiana Monroe? I forgot who they had. It wasn't Mercer. Obviously Alabama played Mercer, but they had that basically bye week game. But it's difficult. I don't care how good you are to play at that level. That's one reason I respect, what Alabama does so much in like Kentucky basketball. These programs that are used to playing, that have to play at a high level all the time because they always get everyone's best shot.
Sure.
And, late in the year when Auburn ascends into the playoff rankings and all that, and they become the marked team, it's very difficult to do that. Give them credit. At home, they played 2 perfect games. Then they go to a neutral site, like we said, and they did not play well.
All right, now you look at these 4 teams that are in, and interesting because Alabama, who was very fortunate to be in the playoffs, is actually the odds-on favorite to win the championship, which again just shows you that that just because Vegas thinks something doesn't mean it's going to happen. Because their top team may not have even made the playoffs. So, but that's name recognition. There's no question about that. Now, I'm not so sure Alabama's the best team or they deserve to be the favorite, even though it's just a small little favorite over, say, Clemson. Fact is these teams are very, very evenly matched. But the Georgia-Oklahoma game, that game kind of is reminding me of what we saw the last couple of years with Alabama and Clemson. We've got the defensive team from the SEC going with the running game, going up against the team with the hotshot quarterback.
Yeah, I'm intrigued by this Oklahoma-Georgia team, and I've been on the Oklahoma kind of bandwagon all season. The committee in previous weeks, when maybe Oklahoma wasn't ranked as high as they could have or should have been, would come out and say, we're really concerned about their defense, and all that. I don't think people have been giving Oklahoma enough credit for offense. We know they're good. This offense is one of the best we've seen in college football in a long time. They're averaging 8.44 yards per play, which is a staggering number. Like, second in the country is Oklahoma State at 7.3. So it's over 1 yard per game more than any other team. Their passing game is unbelievably efficient. Their running game has emerged. Now, one thing to watch is Rodney Anderson, their best running back, could have some legal problems coming up. That's another story for another day. He's been really good down the stretch. I think what we've seen in the to bounce around a little bit in the playoffs the last couple of years, Clemson and Alabama have been really good defensive teams, but they both scored on each other.
Those
games are high scoring. For whatever reason, I think Oklahoma is going to be able to score on Georgia, and my question is, can Georgia score on Oklahoma? You would think so, but putting Jake Fromm, freshman quarterback who's getting better, putting him in some tough spots. So, I haven't really made my final predictions yet. Got a month to stew over that, but I might pick Oklahoma to win the whole thing.
Yeah, I'm actually, to tell you this, I'm leaning towards going with the winner of the Georgia-Oklahoma game over the Clemson-Alabama winner. I just think that if Georgia does get by both Auburn and then Oklahoma, I think that that's going to be some. I mean, they're already a very confident team right now, and I kind of think they are one of the top teams for a reason. They deserve to be there. So if they can get that win, the freshman gets a win on the big stage, I think that's going to go a long way in the championship game. And yeah, for Oklahoma, Mayfield, what do you think about Mayfield and this offense and the difference between what Mayfield's doing in college and what you think that he could possibly do at the next level?
That's a great question, Greg, and I'm fascinated to watch that. Don't pretend to be a scout by any means. I watch tons of college football and I watch the NFL. I can't, I'm going to sit here and say I can't imagine he won't be a good pro. But I go back, the best quarterback I've seen in person is Danny Werfel, and with his accuracy and all that. And he played in an offense that at the time was kind of revolutionary and all that stuff in Florida. And obviously he turned out to be, I would say average at best, and that might be a compliment in the NFL. But that being said, I just think with his swagger, his confidence, and all that stuff, I don't think people realize how good he is. And he has good talent to work with, but he's also had like a new receiving core every year. It's like he makes the stars at receiver. It's not like they have stars and then he just delivers the ball, if that kind of makes sense.
No, absolutely. And I think that also you take a look at, like you mentioned, Rodney Anderson. I got to tell you right now, if anything happens to him, I can't touch Oklahoma because he has been so good for them. Nobody thought that Rodney Anderson would be this good this early in his career, considering what they lost with P. Ryan and Mixon. So he has really helped out Mayfield and given him somebody that he can rely on in the backfield, so he doesn't have to. Because if Georgia just basically knows they don't have to worry about anybody coming out of that backfield, Mayfield will be in trouble.
Yeah, I mean, football, for the most part, football can be a simple game when you can defensively, when you can limit, a team's running game and make them one dimensional. And Oklahoma, that dimension is very, very good, but if they don't complement it with the running game, then obviously it's going to make Oklahoma's passing game more difficult.
Who do you like better, Darnold or Rosen? Because in the game in the game a few weeks ago, Rosen was clearly better than Darnold. But you don't know about Rosen and his durability. That's becoming an issue the last couple of years. Darnold really hasn't had a great year, but he has come on. It seems like he plays better in the second half of the season for whatever reason the last couple of years. Of course, he's had a little bit less talent this year than last year, a lot of expectations this year. What's your gut tell you from either what you know, who you know, and whether or not you think Darnold's even coming out? Because it looks like Rosen will come out.
Yeah, I think Rosen will come out. I think when push comes to shove, Darnold will come out. I appreciate his love of college. Hey, I loved college too. Would have stuck around 4 years, more than 4 years if I could. But I think when push comes to shove, and if you're going to be a top 5 pick, it's very, very difficult, especially as a football player with injury and all that stuff. So I would expect him to come out. I think that's going to be really interesting. I think I don't think there's a clear cut number one over those two guys. I don't think we can downplay the injury situation because Rosen, that's 2 years in a row he's gotten hurt. And correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think Darnold's been hurt. He's a bigger guy. I think he's been healthier.
Yep.
I would lean Darnold with the the injury situation being the tiebreaker.
Yeah, and then of course, if they all come out, which is very possible, then you've got potentially, well, it'll be a guarantee they'll should get at least 4 quarterbacks in the first round. And every year these guys are always being moved up. They might be. I mean, last year was incredible that a couple of these guys, especially what's going on in Kansas City. I mean, nobody expected them to make the move that they made. So that's always going to happen in the NFL draft, and it should be a lot of fun. But we've got more than enough time to talk about that. And then also, I hope we see Josh Allen, by the way, in the bowl game. I don't know. I haven't heard anything yet what he's going to play, so that's still up in the air. He's going to be the wild card though, because you get the feeling that when he does come out, if it is this year, which again most people believe it will be, that you get the feeling that when he goes to the combine, because of his size, because of his arm strength, and all that the scouts are going to just drool all over him and look at him at more potential than actually how ready he is compared to the other guys.
Yeah, he's a fascinating case study for those listening. The Wyoming quarterback who, the story's been told, but no scholarship offers coming out of college. Grew up near Fresno State, I believe a Fresno State fan, and didn't get a scholarship from them out of high school or junior college. His stats aren't very good, and I know Wyoming might not be the best team out there, but they did. I think they went 7-5, in the Mountain West, or won 7 games as a Mountain West team, but only 56 completion percentage, only 6.6 yards per attempt, which is a very low number. 13 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. But Greg, like you mentioned, he passes. He'll do well at the combine. He has all the skills that you need. So I have a feeling that the NFL team that drafts him, I don't think the fans aren't going to like it, because they're going to say, who's this guy from Wyoming? Why does he only have 1,600 yards passing? Why can't he throw more than, for more than 13 touchdowns?
Yeah.
But a lot of people didn't know Carson Wentz this time a couple years ago either.
Yeah, and who knows? You're probably going to get people who might actually also try to compare him to like Blake Bortles or something like that, right, because he's a big guy and may not be a very consistent thrower. But yeah, it's also going to depend on where the kid goes. There's no question about that, and who gets behind him. As far as the coaching situation that's going on, it looks like Tennessee is the last big job in Oregon now, right? Tennessee and Oregon.
Yep. In fact, Tennessee, looks like, and I'm here in Nashville, Tennessee, so you're inundated with Tennessee coverage.
It's got to be gloomy the last few weeks of coverage.
It is. It's fascinating. It's been. I've been around sports my whole life. I'm 46 years old, and we have a recency bias about events that just happened. But this, to me, is one of the most interesting sports stories I've ever seen. Going back to last Sunday with the Greg Schiano deal, and then the coup with Curry, the AD, getting fired, and now Fulmer. It looks like they're zeroing in on a couple or some coordinators from the SEC, whether it's Kevin Steele, offensive or defensive coordinator from Auburn, Mel Tucker from Georgia, or Jeremy Pruitt from Alabama. It looks like Philip Fulmer wants kind of a defensive, tough-minded coordinator. If I'm a Tennessee fan, I'm not overly thrilled by that, but it's not my decision.
Yeah.
Then obviously Oregon with Willie Taggart going to Florida State, we'll see what happens there. Still a very desirable job, but it's been definitely a fun carousel to follow. Most of the jobs, I think you can, when schools hire coaches, for the most part, you think they did a good job because those are good coaches. They're, but they really look like some really good fits nationally this year.
Yeah, and as a fan, it's nice to see, say, Chip Kelly go to UCLA, because you do get the feeling that Chip Kelly is still he's made to be a college coach. That whatever didn't work in the NFL is fine, but you just get the feeling that he's going to do a very good job with the Bruins. And that's good. It's good to see that maybe in a couple of years UCLA will be as good as maybe they have been in a long time, and maybe we'll get some really entertaining UCLA USC matchups for the first time in a while. So I'm all for that. I'm also happy that Dan Mullen's going to Florida. I think that's everybody knows that that's a perfect marriage, and Florida is going to be relevant again, even though they've been to SEC championship games, as we talked about. Those were pretty weak teams. So I think Florida is going to be a national serious national championship contender again, especially if he gets a quarterback. So those are the things. And Scott Frost going to Nebraska. Nebraska. That's also very intriguing, especially with the offense that he's going to bring there. The fact that Nebraska hasn't been very relevant as well. So as a fan, seeing UCLA, Nebraska, and Florida possibly on the rise. And look, I am a Michigan fan, and I know some Michigan fans are a little bit down. Some of them are down on Harbaugh, not all of them, but some of them. And there's no reason for them to be down because once they get a quarterback there, Michigan's going to be fine. So all those programs are going to be really relevant again in a couple of years. That's good for the sport.
Yeah, it looks like Shea Patterson might be the Michigan quarterback sooner rather than later. Ole Miss quarterback who was looking to transfer with the sanctions there. Really, really fun, entertaining. I've seen him in person a couple times. I think he'd be a great do very well at Michigan. The one I'm most excited about, just as a fan of the sport, is Scott Frost.
Okay.
I think he did such a great job at UCF, and Nebraska's a great program. I know those fans they're desperate for success, and I don't know if they can ever reclaim the glory days of the 90s. But I think it was great for the sport that Frost turned down offers or to talk to some perceived better jobs. I mean, Florida's a better job than Nebraska, but the fact that he just said, "I'm going home.
Yeah.
I'm gonna solve the problems there."
Yep.
I do a weekly radio show in Omaha, Nebraska, and let me tell you, I mean, those people are just they are so ecstatic that he's there. So I think that's good for the sport. And I agree with you on UCLA and Chip Kelly. I think he's a much better fit there than he is at would have been in the SEC. One thing that a lot of the recruiting guys will tell you, that while Dan Mullen at Florida is really, really good, but the worst thing to happen to Dan Mullen in Florida is Willie Taggart going to Florida State.
Okay.
He's such a good recruiter. And Florida's still going to get its share of players. And some people say all those schools recruit themselves, but they really don't anymore because you have so many people recruiting the same players.
Sure.
Georgia's going into Florida recruiting, Alabama. So it's going to be fascinating to watch the Willie Taggart versus Dan Mullen recruiting battles over the next few years.
How surprised were you about the whole Herm Edwards thing?
Shocked. I was going to bring that up. I'm fascinated by it. I can't wait to watch it. I just this is a quick little funny story. My son's 13. He's a huge college football fan, and we're in the car the other day, and I mentioned Herm Edwards, and he said, "Is that the guy from ESPN?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "Arizona State's going to hire him. He hasn't coached in like 12 years, hasn't been in college coaching in like 25 years." And then my 16-year-old daughter looks up and says, "I know nothing about football, but that does not seem ideal."
Yeah.
So, I don't get it. And, the whole thing about his agent is the former agent's the AD there. It's just like, I think Arizona State's kind of one of those sleeping giants. I know that term's thrown around a lot.
No, I agree.
I thought Chip Kelly could, if UCLA didn't open, might be interested in that. Yeah. And I just don't think Herm Edwards is worth the risk.
I know. I was there. I forget. I don't know. I was doing arena football like maybe 15 years ago. So I went there and I was like, why isn't this a more successful program? Because they get the most beautiful girls. And we know guys that go to college care about girls. So they get beautiful girls. It's beautiful weather. It makes no sense to me. I mean, you got everything you want. It's sort of like USC, UCLA, kind of. And so, yeah, I'm kind of surprised that all these years that they haven't found somebody for them to be some sort of a relevant, like, national championship contender for even just a few years.
And the year they decided to make the changes when Todd Graham has kind of a bounce back 6-3 record. I mean, so they fire a coach who's 6-3, and they basically make him keep his entire staff. I mean, Herm Edwards doesn't resonate with 17 and 18-year-old kids. I don't care. I mean, he seems like a good guy, and he had some good years in the NFL. And he might do great. He might, in 5 years, we might look back at this and all kind of laugh about it. But Arizona State, for all it has going for it, it does not have great in-state talent. So you're going to have to recruit Texas and Southern California. So just again, as a fan of the sport, I'm glad they did it because I'm fascinated to see if it works.
Is there anybody that we can look back at and say, okay, maybe this is similar to what happened 20 years ago or 15 years ago when so-and-so former NFL head coach went back to college and it was successful? Is there anything there that we can think of, or is this like once in a lifetime? I've never seen this happen before, and actually it becomes successful.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. Pro coaches who have been out of the game and gone back to college. I mean, I can't. John Robinson went back to UCLA. After retiring, it didn't work out very well.
It's just I can't think of it either. So
I can't, and maybe there's a reason that it doesn't happen. I know. Actually, Bill Parcells flirted with Kentucky years ago, and was, if you read his book, it looks like he was pretty close to doing that. But Herm Edwards is not Bill Parcells.
No, Do you think Nick Saban is ever gonna think about the NFL anymore, or is that dead?
I think it's dead. I mean, there's got to be something inside him in his ego that wants to prove that he can do it. After a failed attempt with the Dolphins, but he's getting up there in age. I think his wife controls the shots a lot there, and I think that they're happy there. And obviously, he has a great situation now. When people move on, like if he would have gone to Texas a few years ago, that would have been surprisingly mildly. But sometimes these guys need new challenges. I wouldn't.
Yeah.
That's why it's not necessarily a referendum on your program if a guy just leaves because he wants a new challenge. So, if it would have happened, I would have said maybe 2-3 years ago. I think he's at the stage now where he probably has 3 or 4 or 5 more years, and then we'll retire.
All right. And by the way, do you think I think we're done with major college moves. Like, you think there's anything out there that we should be thinking about? Don't be surprised if somebody name guy, because some of these situations that took place, we were kind of surprised. Graham, that kind of took us off a little bit. Anybody out there that you think, or you think we're pretty much done?
I think pretty much done because it looks like Tennessee's going to hire a coordinator. Oregon, I don't see many. It looks like maybe Jeff Tedford from Fresno State, who coached at Oregon before he got the Cal job.
Oh, that'd be interesting.
But that's not really something that gets the dominoes going. Justin Wilcox, who's at Cal, I think he played at Oregon. Or he coached there for a long time, but I don't think he'd leave Cal after 1 year. And, Arkansas is just filled with Chad Morris, so SMU's open. But, again, that's probably more where they get an up-and-comer. It looks like, all the dominoes are done, but you never know after the NFL season if someone made it, if someone like Nick Saban, not that I think will happen, then that could create a whole nother set.
What are you going to be doing for the? You're going to be taking a look at the bowl season. Do you preview all of the bowl games at Athlon? Obviously the playoffs. How busy is it for you guys between now and the playoffs?
Yeah, I got a strange situation here. As the managing editor of our preview magazines, I am actually working on our baseball preview magazine right now. I'm always working like 2 or 3 weeks or 2 or 3 months ahead of the game. So I do a college football podcast called the Cover 2 Podcast, and I do some predictions on our website. So I'm still, I'll be previewing and predicting the bowl games, but most of my day is done working on our baseball magazine, and then we'll start on our NFL draft magazine after that. But it's definitely a fun time of year. I'm a pro playoff guy. I think it's been great. I think both of these semifinal matchups are going to be really, really fun to watch.
Mitchell, thanks for taking your time to talk to us today, and we look forward to getting an opportunity to talk to you again, maybe even just around the playoffs.
Sounds good, Greg. Enjoyed the chat.
Thank you very much, Mitch. All right, that's Mitch Light, again, managing editor of Athlon Sports, and you got to be well-versed in sports, and those guys at Athlon are. They've got a lot of different sports that they have to cover. We know how that is over at Prime Sports Network, of course. And if you've listened to the Our-Lads Football Radio Network and you don't know what Prime Sports Network is, well, then I'm not sure what you're doing. Of course, that's my website. But anyway, fact is, we're real happy whenever we can get on these national analysts. We were able to get on, I think Mitch is the second or third that we've had on in the last couple of weeks. Of course, we had a guest earlier today, Mike Huguenin, and that is available on demand already over at ourlads.com, so you can check that out. We are also going to, by the way, check back with us I think it's going to be on the Friday before the bowls begin. Of course, the bowls begin a week from Saturday, so Chris Dufresne is going to join us from the Media Guides. He's going to help me to preview the bowls, and then I'll try to get Mitch back on again at some point before maybe the playoffs begin, get his final predictions, as he says he's leaning towards Oklahoma, and also Mike Huguenin, and many more analysts here that have joined us over the last month or so for our first full season here, talking college football on the Our-Lads Football Radio Network. So stay with us all the way through, and then after that, don't forget, you never forget at Our-Lads, because it's all about the NFL draft. We're going to have a lot to talk about in free agency. January, we've got the All-Star games. We've got the East-West game. We've got the Senior Bowl. Then we're going to go into free agency when the Super Bowl is over. That's going to be hot and heavy. We're going to have full coverage there. And then, of course, really, once we get into January, Dan Shanka, I'm going to be really getting him busy on these shows, get his expert opinion every week, all the way through to the NFL draft, including a tremendous amount of draft coverage. So that should be a lot of fun because the busy season is just picking up here at ourlads.com on the Our Lads Football Radio Network. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter as well at PrimeSN, and that's where you could get all of our on-demand announcements when everything's available. You can also have questions, comments, things of that nature. And we'll see you again. Let's see, when's our next show? Our next show is going to be tomorrow, football, NFL. All right, so NFL tomorrow, right here on the Our Lads Football Radio Network, as we preview Week 14 with Tony Mejia. So thanks to Mitch Light and Greg DePalma. We'll see you next time here on the Our Lads Football Radio Network.